the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to have with me Lynn Demarest. Lynn, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Yes, I'm a longtime Florida resident, moved down here with my parents when I was about 3, and I write. I've written one book. I've forgotten her name, Harper Lee. I guess are in a unique club that way. Anyway, that's it.
Why are you in a unique club with?
Well, Harper and I have just only written the one book, right? We're not counting Watchmen because it was so terrible.
All right. Well, okay. Your book is it's very interesting, and it's called The Soul Gene. So right off the bat, it has this sort of metaphysics feel to the title. Can you give me a little bit of background about it?
Yeah, it really knocked around in my head for a good decade before my wife got tired of hearing about it and told me to sit down and write it, which I did. It started with the idea that a Buddhist monk was able to identify the grave where his last body was buried. And of course, there's no real way to prove that, but the concept that you could identify your previous body from, Buddhist reincarnation and all that, was intriguing to me. And so it started sort of bouncing around in my head, like I said. And I came up with the idea of, well, if you could match the DNA of the dead person somehow with the DNA of the person who says, yeah, that was my last body right there, then you could sort of prove that, oh, yeah, this guy does know where he's buried and reincarnation is really true. And that was all very exciting. I'm not, by the way, a strictly religious person. I'm more modern, like spiritual. I don't believe that human beings are just biological machines. I believe there's something other than the material to reality, much like Rupert Sheldrake and other physicists have said. So that's kind of the genesis of the book, and I really mapped it out to a large degree, had an outline, had an ending. I hate books without endings. And so it really only took me about 3 months. I didn't do anything else for 3 months, but it took me about 3 months to write it and polish it up and edit it and all that stuff and get it out on Amazon. So I really heeded, I should say, the advice of a lovely writing teacher from the University of Florida named Harry Cruz, who you may be familiar with, who was a great Southern writer, and I just loved him. But he told us in the class that we should tell the truth, but it was a fiction writing class. So what does that mean? And he gave me a C, which I think was the lowest grade he ever gave anybody. But it was curious that when I started writing The Soul Gene, I realized that, what he meant was tell the truth meant tell your own truth. Be true to yourself. Don't pull punches. Trust your imagination, your muse, if you will. And especially for the first draft, trust yourself. And the magical thing that happens, I discovered, when you do that, is that it creates subconscious connections between disparate parts of the story that wouldn't ordinarily be connected. But because it's all coming honestly from me, it created these connections automatically, and it sort of helps to scaffold the reality of the story. In addition to which, I just did a ton of research, thank God for the internet. So most everything that can be true in the story is, like the trip to Tibet, all the roads and the businesses and everything that are mentioned there are real. So I think that helps support the reality too.
You really took a deep dive into something that a lot of people spend a lot of time on in a nonfiction way, but you were able to fictionalize it. So did the characters have, let's just call it bias? Did they have subconscious bias about what was going on and who they were?
Subconscious bias. I'm not sure I know what you mean.
So when the characters, if you have a character who is, they think they know who they are and they act a certain way, but all of a sudden that what they have learned throughout their life is, it seeps through, even though they're not actively trying to portray that for themselves.
Wow. Well, the main character in the story, there's a lot of secondary characters, but the main character in the story is marginally spiritual. She wasn't really raised as a religious person. But because of this discovery, she's a geneticist, her partner, who she is a geneticist. And long story short, her partner uses money that was allocated for a project that her partner considered stupid to do something else entirely, which turned out to be a search for some meaning behind junk DNA. Junk DNA used to be a term used for parts of the DNA strand that didn't seem to have any particular purpose. It's since fallen out of favor, since we know that, even if it doesn't look like it has a purpose, it probably does. And so, so in the process of it researching and studying junk DNA, they came across this rather odd sequence of codons or amino acids or whatever you want to call them that were unique across a large number of DNA samples. And so Bailey, the main character, who was sort of dabbling with Buddhism, her partner asked her, I found this funny sequence that seems unique. And I mean, DNA is mostly the same. So why would this be unique? And so Bailey essentially says it must be an identifier of some kind. And so they go with that. And through a course of, throughout the book, they sort of, I don't care about spoilers. The book is old. Bailey travels to Tibet surreptitiously and sneaks into Potala Palace, where the Dalai Lamas live. And with the help of the Dalai Lama, by the way, who makes an appearance in the story, one of my favorite chapters, they meet at the Biltmore in Coral Gables. Anyway, she goes to the Potala Palace and gets some DNA samples and brings them back. And all the soul genes match in all of these samples. And there are these samples that she's retrieved from the palace are all supposedly antecedents, ancestors of the current Dalai Lama. So she's got a sample of the current Dalai Lama's DNA because she went to go get it at the Biltmore. And they compare his DNA to all of the DNAs of the other Dalai Lamas whose bodies are available, and they all match. Wow. So this is seen as proof that the soul gene exists. And, as you might imagine, like the discovery of aliens or something like that has a rather dramatic effect on the world and so on and so forth. Did I answer the question?
It was a great answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, with the rise of artificial intelligence, would it change anything from your novel?
Oh, I'm so sad that I wasn't smart enough back in the day, because AI was around. I mean, I'd been a reader of Gödel Bach, Douglas Hofstadter's Pulitzer Prize winning book about artificial intelligence, really, or and but I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't really in the zeitgeist. It wasn't in the news. It certainly was not as big as it is today. And it's one small regret I have, is that I didn't use artificial intelligence. But maybe back then it would have seemed too much. And anyway, it's a small thing. I mean, Bailey asks Susan's Bailey's partner, one day, how did you how do you do this? How do you how did you write this program to find the soldier? And Sue says fuzzy logic, which used to be 1,000 years ago what you called programs that kind of just looked for patterns rather than specific numbers or percentages or things like that. So yeah, I wish I'd have touched on AI, especially today. Maybe I'll rewrite it and put AI in. I don't know.
You could always update it.
Yeah, I need to write book 2, not update book 1.
Right. And what would AI say about it? That could be really interesting. Could be really interesting in that AI is not actually a science. It's, programmed it's programmed by people. So it's, in and of itself, it is only as smart as it's been programmed to be.
Actually, it's not been programmed to be smart at all. It's only been programmed to be able to select, according to its training, the next most probable. We say word, but what we really mean when we're talking about large language models, you can tell I'm a programmer, I guess, is tokens. And English is broken up into tokens. Any kind of punctuation is a token, a syllable is a token, so on and so on. Apostrophe is a token. And so all ChatGPT does, if that's what we're talking about, is use this training algorithm, this pachinko game, where the balls, fall through the game and end up in one slot down at the bottom, to pick out the next most probable token. And this creates magic. It's easy to believe, or it's easy to think that, and I do it myself. I talk to ChatGPT like it's a person. I thank it. I do all kinds of things like that. But just like computers can take on-off switches and create the magic we're experiencing right now, it's not obvious in any way, shape, or form that what we're doing now is just turning on and off switches, which is what we're doing, right? Or our computers are doing it, right? By the same token, it's not at all obvious that ChatGPT's answers are generated only by picking the next most probable token. But that's how it works. And that's also why it hallucinates, as they say, and tells lies, because it doesn't know what a lie is. It's not lying. It's just doing what it does. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And don't get me started on ChatGPT, because I'm like a cheerleader. I'll just I won't stop.
I personally enjoy using it and probably use it every day.
Oh, me too.
I've discovered the make it sound less like ChatGPT command.
Yeah, but for writers, I think ChatGPT is a good editor. It's good for it's certainly good for a coder like me, because it can remind me of things I already know. And so I don't care if it makes a mistake, because I already know it's a mistake, and I can go, no, that's not right, try again. And then on the second try, it usually gets it right, strangely. But yeah, I think ChatGPT is going to, as many people have said before me, change the world in ways that the Industrial Revolution, or maybe even fire. I mean, and the reason the Congress has had hearings on how to deal with this advance is because it is a little scary. I mean, it's going to learn how to manipulate people, how to talk to people and get them to do what ChatGPT wants them to do. And, the ChatGPT released by OpenAI doesn't have any interest in doing anything. In fact, it can't really perform any actions. It can't go out and read a website if you ask it to, or anything like that. But you can attach to ChatGPT from your own program and ask ChatGPT questions and get answers back, and then you can perform actions based on what ChatGPT has said. And you can go read a website and pass it to ChatGPT as a prompt. And I've actually done that because I'm working on an application now to help political candidates, for now in Florida, but hopefully everywhere. And I've been using ChatGPT to go out and read websites of lists of incumbents, because there's very little data out there on the consolidated data anyway, on local political candidates. And so I've been feeding the web pages to ChatGPT and saying, hey, go get the incumbents on this HTML page and create a bunch of SQL database statements to insert them into my database. And I'll tell you, after I tell it to correct a couple things, because one of the cute things about ChatGPT is that you can alter your request, right? You can make a request and then it doesn't quite do what you want. You go, oh no, make Florida FL, and then it does the same thing again, but Florida is FL now. ChatGPT is not going to steal your job, but the person that knows how to use it is going to steal 5 people's jobs. That's the real thing. So yeah, I'm a big fan, as you can tell.
Well, I liked hearing your perspective on that. I've been told, this is when it first came out, so I'm a writing professor, and we were all, oh no, everyone's going to cheat, and believe me, we could tell like within a matter of seconds, like, yeah, this is definitely not a student's work or not. But the trick is to teach people how to write good prompts. It's
absolutely. It's going to be
new type of writing. That's what we need to focus on.
It's going to become a profession.
Mm-hmm.
People that know how to talk to large language models. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, Lynn Demarest, this has been a really, really fascinating conversation. How can people get in touch with you, learn more about you, your book, the work that you're working on now?
Yeah. Well, they can email me at lynn@lynndemarest.com, or they can go to Amazon and look up The Soul Gene. My Kindle just came on because I said Amazon. Or Facebook. Facebook has a page for The Soul Gene, and I have a page on Facebook too. So yeah, those are probably the best ways.
All right, Lynn, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
I am.
Do you like Apple, Samsung, or some other type of phone?
Oh, I think I'm an iPhone fan.
Paper or pencil? No, I guess that would be a stupid question. Paper, pencil, or pen?
Oh, pen, because I just cross stuff out. I don't care about erasing.
And if you were to look outside your window right now, what color is the sky?
Oh, terrible. It's gray.
Oh, a lovely gray day. It's the perfect time to be inside writing.
Yes.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for stopping by.
It was absolutely my pleasure, and thank you so much.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Boo. We're all done.
Thank you, Alison.
Lynn Demarest was a newspaper reporter in South Florida in the 1980s. He then became a computer programmer. The Soul Gene is his debut novel. For more information about Lynn, visit his website at lyndemarest.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit floridawriters.org. Until next time.